All right. Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon,
Good
everybody.
afternoon. Good
Hi,
afternoon.
Dr. Mel. Thank you for
Sorry, it's
joining
just
us.
finished on the other side.
Yeah, we're going to go straight and start so that we can finish by 3 and leave for the next program. So, this is the poem that I shared with everyone on the WhatsApp group. This is the one that's scheduled in our course, in our course reading list. The poet laureate, national laureate, Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh's poem, well-known poem, Si Tenggang's Homecoming. Um, we're gonna basically use this hour plus or minus to just give our own personal responses to this particular poem, right? So as you know, with the reading and the discussing of text at this level that you're doing, as you read through the text, you obviously will form certain ideas based on previous knowledge of this figure, Sitenggang, based on what you know of his story, right, the folklore, and the theme of homecoming as painted in this poem, right? So keeping in mind that this is we're distinguishing between the poet and the persona, the voice, right? The first person voice, first person point of view voice in this poem, the persona. So we'll refer to obviously the I in this poem as the persona, right? And the persona here is described by the poet as akin to a folklore figure called Sitenggang. So there's lots of associations that the poet is drawing between the persona, the I, and what the I is experiencing, and what we know of a particular figure of Malay folklore called Setenggang, and what he did and how he behaved or misbehaved, if you like. So perhaps if I could draw your attention to the text and let's read the poem together and identify at this stage at least, identify anything that stands out, that feels that that speaks to you, any particular line, any particular idea that stands out and speaks to you. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stanzas. Can I invite one of you to start it off first? Lisa, can I say, Lisa, can you read us the first stanza?
Sure, yes. The physical journey that I traverse is the journey of the soul. Transport of the self from a fatherland to a country collected by sight and mind. The knowledge, the sweats from it, the stranger's experience from one who had learned to see, reflect, and choose between the challenging actualities.
Doctor, I think you accidentally pressed the stop sharing button.
I didn't accidentally because I wanted to
Sorry.
allow Salim to come in. I had to
All right.
go back to
Oh,
the
sorry.
sorry about that. Yeah, okay. Elsa, Elia.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, doctor. You're not the first one to get it
Really,
wrong.
I apologize.
It's
Apologize.
okay. All right. Okay. It's true I have growled at my mother and grandmother, but only after having told them my predicament that they have never brought to consideration. The wife that I began to love in my loneliness in the country that alienated me. They envelop in their prejudgment. I have not entirely returned, I know, having been changed by time and place, caused by problems, estranged by absence.
Ruby.
But look, I have brought myself home, seasoned by faith, broadened by land and language. I am no longer afraid of the oceans, of the differences between people, no longer easily snared, no words of ideas.
Uh, Shah.
The journey was a loyal teacher who was never tardy in explaining cultures and variousness. Look, I am just like you, still Malay, sensitive to what I believe is good, and more ready to understand. Mm, Then,
Uh,
yeah,
Go on then.
then
Uh,
my bread, then my brothers, the contents of these boats are yours too, because I have returned.
uh, Aimi.
Travel makes me a seeker who does not take what is given without sincerity, or that which demands payment from beliefs. The years at sea and in coastal state have taught me to choose, to accept only those tested by comparison, or that which matches the roots of my ancestors, which returns me to my village at its completeness.
Okay. Um, so based on the text, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. I just want you to look through the text and based on the reading. Sometimes with poems, especially, I wouldn't say sometimes, with poems, especially, it's the reading out loud that makes the text come to life. So the text itself, when not read out loud, has a different representation. But the minute you read it out loud, especially the pauses, the leap from one stanza to another, and how it appears on the page itself, and how it is read then, creates a kind of an impact to you, the readers, right? So at this stage, we're not going into the context, the cultural, historical connection to Malaysia. And he mentioned the Malays there, right? We're not going to go into that. We're just looking at the level of text. We're doing close textual reading for at least this level. So for the 5 minutes I'm going to give you, what I want you to do is as you're reading it, highlight, underline, circle any particular phrases that stood out to you as you are going through it again, that stands out to you now. Uh, Also, questions that you may have as you're reading it, questions that you may want to ask the persona. Were you given the chance to speak to him directly? I don't mean Prof Muhammad Haji Salleh, I don't mean the poet, I meant the persona. Okay, so highlight phrases or words, images that stands out, as well as questions that you want to kind of ask, right? And the gaps that you see. What gaps do you see in this text? All right, you have 5 minutes from now. 2 more minutes. Okay, let's get to it. So for this session, I'm just going to kind of I copied and paste the poem into a Word document. So I'm just going to kind of pick up on anything that you bring up or you highlight, be it questions or ideas or anything from the text that you want to kind of dissect. So we're doing a closed textual reading of the text. So who would like to go first? Keep in mind we have to finish by 3. So
Yeah, I'll go first, Doctor.
yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay, all
Yes.
right. So for the phrases that I like, I do love this variety of worldview that he mentioned. So let me just, yeah. So it's first is the challenging actualities. Yeah, over
Which
there in the middle
which
there. Okay, from yes, over there,
Is it
and
that
challenging or
then
changing?
Tula, I copied paste from the
Changing kan?
is it changing? Changing, but changing actualities also give the same impactful
Because the
thingy.
text I have is changing.
Tula, apa
Oh,
I
but it's okay for now. All right, but
okay.
anyway, Doctor, the next one also of the same theme. I'm no longer afraid of the oceans, of the differences between people. I also believe that that carries the same meaning. Or
Uh,
atas. Oh, sorry. Apa.
uh,
Yeah, differences between people.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm like bringing you back and forth, and then
No, no, no. So in the end, we will see the poem in a different light. Yeah.
mm, and then there is this the journey was a loyal teacher who was never tardy in explaining culture and variousness. So I love that in explaining cultures and variousness. Just that cultures and variousness, if I may. Yeah. So I love that because he is repeating how when he was traveling, he's seeing 1,001 different things. I wonder what is he. So the gap here is how does he perceive his village, his homeland? Is his homeland so limited and so narrow? So I find he does not really explain that. But he is, for me, giving the image that wherever that he has been to, um, gave him that expansion. Whereas home is narrow, home is limiting, and home is unforgiving. All right, so that's yes.
Where do you get the idea that home appears limiting?
First is the mother, the growling verse. Okay, all right. And then, of course, the whole thing where it says, they have never brought to consideration the wife that I begin to love in my loneliness. For me, I read it as not just mother and grandmother, I read it as the whole family,
Mm.
representing community as well.
The whole family what doing what?
The whole family uh, don't have any consideration towards this wife that he was bringing back. And then this wife he has grown to love because he was in a different country that alienated him. So there was no familial acceptance towards the persona lah. And then another thing, I'm not sure if it's still linked though. He has to there is this repetition of having to convince the reader, look, I'm still Malay. I know what is good. I know what is bad. As if he is persuading the reader to open up their mind. So I'm assuming he's directing this towards a specific audience.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah. And yeah, and then he has to like, and then when he says, I'm sorry if I'm taking up anybody's time. And then when he says, I believe is good and more ready to understand than my brothers. Who are these brothers? His village brothers? His brother? So I'm not sure who is he referring to.
So you got to read the whole thing as a phrase, as part
Ah,
of an idea, right? Still Malay, sensitive to
sensitive,
what
yeah.
I believe is good, and more ready to understand than my brothers. So
Does he mean
what's the gap?
fellow Malays or fellow village people?
Yeah. We'll unpack that in a minute.
All right. So yeah, those are the things that really intrigue me, Doctor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Next,
Sorry, doctor.
is that Salim? I cannot see your
Assalamu alaikum.
face. Waalaikumsalam. Yes, Salim, go ahead.
Sorry, doctor. Just a question. I have been, I have read, in fact, something about this poem, in fact, and it said that it's about personal identity.
Salim, am I sharing screen? If you heard me at the beginning of our session, I said don't bring in contextual knowledge at this point, right? Don't bring in what other people say about this text. We want to start with you as a reader responding to the text. And based on your responses, you will then compare it with other people's readings, published readings of this particular poem. Then you will be able to find the gap, right? So let's begin at this point. Let's begin only with what you see in this text that you want to raise. Who would like to go next?
Just I see that the poet is talking about his identity, and I don't know why he's talking about that, and he's a Malaysian
Line's not very clear, Salim.
person.
Sorry, is it just me or can
No, sorry, Sadim, you faded away. We couldn't hear you.
Doctor, sorry, I think there is a problem with with the voice
I can hear you
here.
now. I can hear you now. Just maybe closer to the mic.
Sorry, doctor, I don't know why is that. Anyway, just I would like to tell you that why he's talking about identity, personal identity. I have read the text, and he's talking about personal identity. So the poet traveled to America, and why? My question is only why he's talking about personal identity.
yeah.
So he said, why is he talking about personal identity? Is it you're asking about the persona, Salim?
Yeah,
You're saying
sure.
why is the persona talking about personal identity?
Yeah,
Is that an observation or a question?
it's a question, doctor. Sorry.
Where did you get the idea that he's talking about the persona is talking about his personal identity? Where in the poem did you get that idea?
When he says still Malay.
When he says still Malay.
Yeah, I mean he's still, as I understand, he's still Malaysian, but he's in general, he's in person, he is personal Malaysian. So why he said that? My question is that.
Okay. First of all, the idea of being a Malay is not the same as being a Malaysian. Just like the idea of being a Kurd doesn't mean you're a member of Iraq, right? So being Malay is part of a particular ethnic community. It's not a citizenship, right? It's not your sense of citizenship, right? So in this idea, the question you ask is, why is he talking about being a Malay? Is that the question?
Sorry, Salim, you're muted. Were you responding?
Yes, my question is that, Doctor.
Perhaps another way of addressing this would be by looking at the statement, still Malay. Look, I'm just like you, still Malay. That statement, you could then ask, why is the persona having to assert that sense of being a Malay? Why is that important for him to do that? Why is it important to him to address that? If you compare this poem with we're not doing comparative literature, obviously, but intertextuality comes in. Um, um,
I too sing, is it? Or I too?
so if you compare it to this particular poem, the first line is "I too sing America." So the gap there is people might assume I don't sing America. And hence I have to assert that I too sing America. So when you come to this particular line, you're right. That question that you ask is why? Why does he need to assert his sense of not identity specifically? Because that can be all encompassing. It could be being a husband, it could be being a student, being a traveler, it could be so many different parts of his identity, right? The persona's identity. But you're right. Why the need to position his sense of ethnic rootedness in this way? The gap may be that people question he's not Malay enough, perhaps, right? So that is an element of the unsaid here. So yeah, thank you so much. Somebody else?
Okay, I'll go
Oh,
next.
okay.
Who's that? Elia?
Yeah, okay.
Yes, go ahead.
As I was reading the poem, I feel like it is as if like a letter to convince and to persuade, because the persona is trying to convince and persuade the community in his hometown to accept him back into the community, especially in stanza 3 and 4. In stanza 3, he said, "But look, I have brought myself home, seasoned by faith, broadened by land and language." So he was like trying to explain himself and explain the decision that he made to travel to another country and how that decision has helped him to gain new knowledge, but at the same time not compromise the identity that he has within himself. Yeah. And my question is from stanza 2, when he says, "In the country that alienated me, they envelop in their prejudgment." So my question is, what is the prejudgment that made him decided to come back? Yeah. Now, what was the prejudgment that he had to deal with in another country that made him decide to come back to his home?
Again, the prejudgment is that referring to the country that he left behind or the country that he traveled to?
The country that he traveled to. Yeah.
Can we also ask who is they?
Yeah.
In this stanza, right? It's that part is not clear because you have a they here. Who is they here being? Who is the persona referring to when he says they? Any ideas?
I was guessing that it was his mother and grandmother since it was from the previous line.
What else? Let's just read that a little bit closely, yeah? But only after having told but only after having told them my predicament that they have never brought to consideration, the wife that I began to love in my loneliness in the country that alienated me, they enveloped in their prejudgment. So who is they referring to? Could come back to that, but I want you to probe, because he's using the same pronoun, right, throughout those few lines. So if he was going to introduce a new subject, then that new subject will be the they. But because he's referring to this collective pronoun of them, they, and then again they, it might seem as if he's referring to the same group of people, right? I'm just getting you all to think about that. Okay, who's next?
Can I go next?
Ken, I mean, right?
Yes. The line that stood out to me is actually on the first stanza, where when he said transport of the self from a fatherland. This one stood out to me the most because usually we people or others use the term motherland instead of fatherland. So I wonder why he inserts fatherland instead of motherland. And then in I think and then he also mentioned, it's true I have growled at my mother and grandmother. So I'm wondering why particularly my mother and grandmother. It's like a difference of gender. And at the latest stanzas, I was also wondering how he um can you go down okay he
Which
said
one? The second stanza?
um
The third stanza?
the I think the second.
Mm.
Okay. He said second. Oh, can you go a little bit upwards? Okay. Um, the stanza where he said that I have not yet returned, changed by time, and I think he mentioned about he has not yet fully returned, and he was changed by time and also experience, if I'm not
I think
mistaken.
it's in stanza 2.
Stanza two.
I'm not mistaken. I've not been
The
entirely
end of the
written
first
I have
on.
not.
Yeah.
verse, yeah,
Yeah,
the end of the first one.
the
Oh,
first stanza.
Estranged by absence is the last line.
Yeah, yeah, that one.
Which
Um,
line specifically, Eileen?
I have not entirely returned. I know, having been changed by time and place, caused by
Mm.
problems and estranged absence. It makes me wonder what kind of change that he is going through. Is it his belief in traditional or customs, or maybe just the way of living differs from how his society used to live or practice back in his hometown? Is that the change that he is experiencing?
Mm. So the idea of return, when you return, if you look at the idea, I will give you all the notes later, by the way. If you look at the idea of return, if you look at the archetypal hero's journey, and how when we problematize the hero's journey, the hero leaves, his homeland with that sense of dread, because he doesn't want to leave, but he's having to leave the homeland. Is this a good one? Maybe not. But he leaves because he's having to leave. He's having to do something. He's called to adventure, and because of that, he has to leave his known comfort homeland, and he departs. He endures a kind of a travel through the journey. He goes through various obstacles, learns more about himself, and then he returns. but he doesn't return the same person he left, right? You never return in the same as the same person, no matter how far or how brief the journey is. You always return transformed, and that is to be expected. Only only somebody who is unwelcoming of changes will assume that every time I go somewhere I must return the same person in terms of my values, my worldview. You cannot do that, because the journey would have transformed you, right? Just like yourselves, when you go through this MA program, you would have been transformed by, one hopes, because of the reading, the assignment, the discussion, the conversation, the thought-provoking ideas that you yourselves are developing, as well as what your classmates are developing, right? And this is a matter of a few semesters. What if you're traveling to another country, different cultures, different way of life, and you don't have your families there with you? If you don't have your families there with you, who do you rely on to support you, to provide you with that kind of guidance or that kind of strength, right? So surely you will not return the same person you went. You would have gained in terms of your confidence, in terms of the way you view the world, right? What others may think of those people you have met, what others may have think about them, or what others would have said about them. You would have a first-hand knowledge about them, right? So your sense of worldview would be different. So the idea that I have not entirely returned is in a sense that the I that went, have not come back, because the person who's come back is come back because the person who's come back has been changed by the place he was living in, and the times, and the people, and all that. That goes without saying, right? I hope you get that, everyone. But that line, I like that as well. I've not entirely returned. I know, and I like that, because the person you were when you left is not the person you are now. Anything else? I mean,
No, I think that's it.
okay. Who else?
May I go
It's
next?
me, I think.
Oh,
Sorry.
no, it's Shahira. You haven't gone yet,
No
have
need
you?
to fight over this. Everybody will get a chance to say something.
Sorry, I think you said it first. So never mind. You can go first then.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Mine would be, of course, if Elia said it's like a letter, right? Then my opinion is that because I don't know, because I read it at night, girl, but it felt like an old man, trying to tell you a story, somewhat of his journey, and 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 I went to the extent that this old man is trying to tell his grandchild or something that it's okay to come back, and you're gonna be the same person, da, da, da. But that's just one point of it lah. But yeah, so I think the poem has this optimistic tone to it, considering the Si Tenggang is actually like a curse, right? He became
A
so,
stone or
yeah.
something.
So
Yeah.
We'll,
so
we'll
I
get to
was,
the context. We'll get to
yeah.
the
Okay,
context
sorry.
of the image of the title, in the
Yes.
title. We'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah, so I think the tone is rather optimistic from what I expected it to be lah. Because Si Tenggang is like that as we know it, and then yeah, same goes to the last three stanzas or last two stanzas. Um, where it says, okay, the journey, right? The travel, the journey, and then he says about he is still a Malay. He is sensitive to what I believe is good. And then the end of it, at the end of the poem, he also talks like about his. He continues talking about his travel again. So it's like sandwich to. Two of them are like sandwich to like I'm Malay, but don't worry. um, the travel has made me this person, and you know my journey means I have this knowledge that I can share with you, something, 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 you know.
So
but
which
the
part in the last stanza, Shah, which
mhm.
part in the last stanza stands out in that sense to you?
Honestly, last night it was the um wait, where is it? Travel makes me a seeker who does not take what is given without sincerity, or that which demands payment from beliefs. I think because uh, I don't know. I think there's a lot to unpack, but I don't know,
Who is
which
he
sta-
speaking to in this line?
I
Because
thought.
you said that this could be a letter. You're picking up what Elia was saying, and
Yeah,
you're saying that it could be maybe a letter to his, the younger generation, his grandkids, or
maybe kan.
yeah, because
Yeah. So
you're saying this could be an old man, right?
yeah.
Uh,
But my question is, I would not question, but more of like what I like to unpack is that travel makes me a seeker who does not take what is given without sincerity. What is that? And or that which demands payment from beliefs. The whole sentence that intrigues me, like, okay, why is this, and why is it situated there after he said that he is a Malay? Yeah, so that's about it from me.
okay, who's next?
I think. Okay, so the line that struck me the most as I was reading is from the second stanza, the first line. It's true, I have growled at my mother and grandmother, but only after having told them my predicament. I think it's because it reminded me of the original Si Tanggang story. It kind of brought me back to like
Oh, sorry.
how.
Is this a new stanza? Did I merge it? Is this one? Is this a
Uh,
separate stanza?
yeah, that's the one. It's true, I
Oh,
have growled at my
sorry,
mother. Yeah, that's.
sorry.
Yeah, but it struck me because it kind of like made me remember of the original story, like the story of how I think he left his mother, something came back and didn't acknowledge her, right? But like how say the original story. Si Tanggang was how is it portrayed as someone who is an unfilial child, derhaka, right? But in from this poem, I get the feeling rather than unfilial, it's more like a rebellious child. It's like a coming of age poem, I could say. So how you say it's like the other side of the coin, a POV, not from the mother but from the child, and from that kind of Tanggang, I can empathize with because he's someone I think who's ahead of his time. It's the gist of what I get from this poem. He has kind of like a modern mindset of wanting to go to travel outside of his planes and to test his boundaries. Yeah, but because it's like an old poem, it kind of the Malaysian value back then was we very much highlight on filial piety, right? That your family and all that. But si Tanggang, I don't know. You see, Tanggang was in modern time, like in this era. If I imagine him in this era, his sin wouldn't be so heavy because it's quite normal. I say for a child to go out and travel. His only problem was that he didn't acknowledge his poor mother when after he married that princess and came back. So I think that was all his fault. I did, and honestly, I didn't think he deserved being turned into stone. But okay, that's how the story went, right? And there's also a sense of maturedness from the story. Like from the beginning, he said like he felt that he didn't felt accepted in his community, and then to the last stanza, you see that he said that um, which returns me to my village and its completeness. So he viewed his homeland.
Where?
The very last line. Yeah,
Mm.
which returns me to my village and its completeness. So that's already the idea of completeness. After he came back, he had a new view of his fatherland. So after traversing and seeing the world, how you say he matured lah. He matured in his mindset, and then yeah, he kind of taught him the ways of the world and he also said like what is given without sincerity or that which demands payment from beliefs. I don't know if this is was a jab at his mother or what, because you said that my a mother's love is like boundless, right? But was his mother truly not expecting payment from him? Like at the end of the day, after she took care of him, of course, it's only right that you as a son give back. But here he said like it's like giving something sincerity is not taking anything back. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I think him and his mother had different concepts of sincerity and different ideas of what it means to
Mm,
like and be sincere to another person. Yeah, so
mm.
that. Mhm.
Where is the filial piety? Where did I put that? Okay, never mind. Um, can somebody confirm whether this is challenging or changing?
I have two different versions, which both goes with changing.
Okay,
Both
then
has
then
changing.
then it must be changing. Oh, good Lord, what did I delete? Ah, okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, anybody else?
Can I just give some thoughts, Dr. Rai?
Please do.
I can't help but make some comparisons based on the context as well. But I think the idea of, first of all, the original story of Si Tanggang itself, from the old to the new, has changed to Si Tenggang. So it's very subtle, and I feel that that itself is very speaking to that the entire essence of the story of the change. You know, um, even if it's however subtle, it's still a change from
Mm,
Tanggang to Tenggang.
mm,
And it's always si Tanggang yang derhaka, the
mm,
ungrateful
mm,
son. But here you have the si Tenggang is homecoming. So even the tone of the actual the association what's associated with the name is completely different in Muhammad Haji Salleh's revisioning of the original folktale, right? And I kind of align myself with Aimi's observations as well, that these aspects jumped out to me, because for me the essence of Si Tanggang has always been the relationship with the mother. And if you talk about the extremeness to which the emotions that led the mother to curse the son,
mm,
so that aspect has always been highlighted in the plot of that story. And here, so it's when he comes back, it's almost the return to see the mother as well, but here you have the fatherland
yep.
so jumping out, that he refers to the fatherland. And then of course then he talks about growling at mother and grandmother, but then the return, it's also to return to his brothers,
Mm,
because the idea is always that in the original folktale we see Tanggang as an only child,
mm,
that the mother was completely about him. But
mm,
here you see when he come, and he had nothing else to come back to, almost, I mean, and that's kind of why we see the only reason for him to come back was perhaps uh to kind of even see if the mother is all right or otherwise. But here you see he said, I've not returned empty, I have returned together with everything that I have for my brothers. So what I think here the poet, or the gives you the sense of there is a clear purpose to return, other than filial piety, but also in terms of the brotherhood. And so I see this kind of as the fatherland, and then he talks to himself as a man. So there's almost this sense of responsibility between from for as a son to the father, looking at the father son relationship, as opposed to the mother son relationship, and also that responsibility to the brothers.
mm,
I like that kind of that link there, between the father and the son to the brothers. And so the sense of responsibility and that he feels that he has. And also you always think about Tanggang as being ungrateful to the parents, ungrateful to the land, totally not loyal to the place that he came from. But then he talks about the journey as a loyal teacher. The idea of the
mm.
loyalty comes up, it's just really different than everything that's to do with Tanggang. It's always the derak, ungrateful,
Yeah.
loyal, forget, you forget where you came from, all the Malay proverbs, to do with people who forget where they come from. But here he emphasizes the homecoming, the loyalty, the return. I brought myself home. It's just not, there's a lot of emphasis on the idea of coming back. So that's just a little bit of
Yeah, thank you,
things.
Dr.
Yeah.
Mel. Anybody else wants to, based on the discussion, anybody else want to pitch in as well?
Can we go to context right now, Dr. Rai?
Yes, go ahead. Itching to say
No,
something
no,
in
no,
context.
no. When I read this, there's some phrases in Malay culture that I think it's embedded here, even though not literal, like perantau. So perantau for Salim, it means nomad. I think a lot of us in Asian, we were a nomadic culture, so we have to travel around, travel around. Of course, that is why that strangest experience. But that's why he emphasizing on this. I'm not sure why the notion of anak derhaka is not very strong. I guess it is on purpose. He didn't, because he doesn't admit that he's derhaka.
Mm,
Yeah. But the thing is, I couldn't help but think why MHS used this poem to retell si Tenggang. To be honest though, anak derhaka, a disobedient child is very strong in the Malay psyche, and I think in the psyche of every Asian culture lah. So it is for me a counter narrative, because mothers have always have this absolute hold
mm,
over child. So this is basically the child speaking back.
mm,
Especially with the portrayal of Si Tanggang, like Dr. Mel said, it's always very one-dimensional,
mm,
very like nyah kau daripada sini, all of this.
mm.
So that is for me the context, I think.
But what was it that Sitanggang was, the original story of Sitanggang? What was he accused of? What was he accused of in terms of being the hacker or ungrateful, or what specifically was he being accused of? Does anybody
Uh,
remember?
Based on what I read in a few storybooks, the mother, because he came back as a anak nakoda, he came back as a captain, and then the mother, who was very poor, approached the ship with a sampan, or with a boat, and then I think the mother was giving food, what used to be his favorite food, but he was like, he pushed it away, and then the mother went back to shore, the mother cried, and then the mother cursed him. So it was that specific disacknowledgement of the mother. He didn't, like, he's just like, okay, this is not my mother, I do not know who you are, I'm a changed
Mm,
man. Yeah. So because he's accepted his new reality, he's
mm,
discarding and he's renouncing his
yeah.
past. Yeah.
Dr. Rai,
Yeah.
if I may ask, does Salim have a copy of the original tale story, or has
No,
he
no,
read?
we're not going
Oh,
into
okay.
that just yet, but I think we need to. But right now, it's just about unpacking
Mm.
what is in this poem. I
Yeah.
want to kind of give everyone the opportunity to just bring in whatever context that they have. And then afterwards, when the guest lecture, when we have the guest lecture, we'll be able to kind of create a more impactful reading for sure. But thanks for reminding me, Dr. Mel, because we will definitely bring that up. But this
I
idea
have the
of,
English version if you want to.
okay, brilliant. But is that a revisioning also? Is that there
Uh,
isn't an original text? Is there?
I think the one that I have is also by Muhammad Haji Salleh, if I'm not
Mm,
mistaken. The
mm,
story, but I mean, it's a retelling of the
yeah,
Sitanggang. But it's Sitanggang, so it is
yeah.
about you know
Mm.
Sidaruma, Sitanggang, and all the
Mm,
characters.
mm, mm. Can we will definitely bring up those contextual information, but suffice to have the knowledge that at this moment, the character Sitanggang was you know he traveled for to enrich himself, to kind of broaden his horizon, as well as to earn a better living, and somehow managed to become a very successful sailor, and married into a very wealthy household as well. When he returned and renounced. I like Ruby's words. He chose to renounce his mother when she meets him the first time upon him returning. And when he did that, she was really heartbroken, and she literally prayed that that catastrophe befalls him. And at that moment, he was transformed into a rock, and legend has it that the rock is still there. That part I am not too sure how far it's accurate, but that's the element of the name Sitanggang. As Dr. Mel mentioned, it's spelled with an A. Sitanggang. The spelling itself shows a kind of a revisioning that Professor Muhammad Haji Salleh in his poem has chosen to incorporate. But what I want you to do is to continue to update this document. I'll share this document with you, to continue to update this document as you see it relevant in the way you read the text. Now bringing in both contextual knowledge about the folklore character, as well as previous readings. There is an essay journal article on this particular poem as well. So use that kind of information to create a more impactful reading of what this text is about, what this poem is about. And that will be your e-task. That information that you do, that kind of a work that you do, that will be your e-task. Okay, so any questions? Any questions? Now I can see everybody's faces. Just now I was like staring at the Word document. Yes.
Doctor, so we will be updating on the very same document.
I will share the document. You can use whatever you find necessary. That will become our notes for today's discussion. But you may choose to look at it from a different point of view. So you may start scratch. No problem. Yeah. Okay, any questions? I'm going to quickly go around the class. Start with Elia.
No questions from me.
Any comments? Anything to say?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Okay, Salim.
Thank you, Doctor. I like this poem so much because it reminds me with lots of things. When I came to Malaysia, when I traveled to US and I stayed there for like 14 days, it reminds me of the same feelings. In fact, I like it so much. Thank you so much. I don't have any questions.
Brilliant.
Doctor.
Brilliant. Thank you. Aimee?
No comment from me.
Lama je dia tunggu. Okay, thank you very much, Shah.
Me. No, I might be revisiting Sitanggang soon because, right, it's been so long since I've heard this story and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Nothing other than the fact that I don't think the mother should make decisions while she's emotionally unstable. I wonder if she kind of regretted that. I know like people do crazy things in the moment, but like, yeah, probably should have waited some time to think it through before.
I was not expecting that statement, Lisa.
Noted, Lisa. I'll not be that mother.
But practice empathy. Put yourself in a situation of an elderly woman who's been waiting for her son for a long time, and she has not been taken care of. No one is taking care of her, right? So he is out there, making a living and trying to earn and trying to become the man that he wants to be, right? And upon returning, he doesn't even give her that kind of respect and reverence due to a mother. So put yourself in that context, how hurt she must have felt to experience that kind of, to have that kind of a response to the son that she doted on. So put that into context. It's not like she's out there living her life and traveling and becoming the person she wants to be, right? So I'm not saying she's right. I completely agree with you. But at the same time, there is a kind of a moral to that tale of the responsibilities that child has towards the mother. It's not so much about money and all that, but reverence and respect. So maybe I don't know. What do I know? but I,
A
I see
lot.
your point. I see Lisa's point, but I agree with Lisa as well. But at the same time, I'm thinking there must be some semblance to that story, some truth to that story. Ruby.
I think it's a lovely poem. It's a counter narrative which I love. Um, and actually, last Sam, because I attended Dr. Anita's class, so
Mm,
this is a recurring thing in
mm,
classes and in any lessons about Malaysian literature. So
mm.
and then there was this theory that it originated among it's an indigenous
Yep,
orang asli folklore. So that is
yep,
something I find very
yep,
so he
yep.
was originally a native, and then he assimilated into Malay culture. So
Right.
that really just shattered my
Mm,
thing. Yeah, see, I can see. So Elia, that was my face when I learned that.
mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm.
so yeah. So thank you so much for revisiting, so allowing me to revisit this.
Thank you, Dr. Mel.
No, for me, it's just a full circle. A couple of months ago, my 6-year-old boy was doing si Tenggang in school for class. They did a whole semester of it in various steps, and including me having to do an online video and being the mother. So at one point, we were actually making a video online, and then I was from the other side yelling si Tenggang, you know. But it just goes to see, show you about literature, right? How something that can be read by a 6-year-old, and then we come back here in a postgraduate class and we talk about it differently. I mean, it's the same things, but we've got to see it in so many different points of view. Yeah, so for me, it's quite surreal
Mm,
having encountered si Tanggang just recently, and having to
mm,
get the tengkolok for my son, and
mm,
was very immersive that way. And then again today, so
mm.
very nice.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone. My personal take is that Prof Muhammad is also positioning himself as a Malay who may not be considered as pure Malay for his mannerisms, for his worldview. Keep in mind that he wrote in English as well, right? Throughout 60s and 70s. It was only after the National Language Act that he decided to switch to Malay. So that element of is he Malay enough? He may be accused of that. Is he Malay enough for writing in a colonial tongue? Right, does he associate himself in that way? And how far is his sense of belonging within that community? What Dr. Mel talked about, the brothers, how well is he received by quote unquote the brothers? So maybe this is his way of harkening back to that kind of voice of criticism, perhaps through this persona in this particular poem, right? But we'll have more such discussion with Dr. Anita when she comes to give us a guest lecture, inshallah, early December. I'll keep you all informed, right? But if there's nothing else, we'll end the class here today. I apologize for having a short class, but as I said, Dr. Mel and I have to attend a faculty program. But you have this time, and I would like you, let me just end the recording here first. Smile, everybody.